In 1952, Bill Mosienko used 21 seconds to forever write his name into history, scoring 3 goals in a row, a feat that has never been repeated. The world remembers him as an immortal legend because of that flash of light. But a man's life is not a moment. Behind those 21 seconds of glory are decades of another tragedy, a silent war that devastated his family. This is not just the story of a record holder, but also the story of a father who witnessed the tragedy of his own son. A story of the brightest glory and the darkest pain coexisting in one life. To understand the man, you have to understand where he came from. William Mosienko was born on November 2nd, 1921, in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And not just any part of Winnipeg. He was a child of the North End, a sprawling, working-class neighborhood that was the heart of the city's immigrant community. In the early 20th century, this was the landing spot for thousands of families from Eastern Europe, fleeing poverty and turmoil for a shot at a new life in Canada. Bill's parents were Ukrainian immigrants. They arrived with little more than the clothes on their backs and a fierce determination to build a better future for their children. It was a tough existence. The winters were brutal, the work was hard, and money was always scarce. The Mosienko home was a small, crowded house on Stella Avenue, filled with the sounds and smells of a large family. Bill was one of 14 children. His father worked grueling hours at a slaughterhouse, a physically demanding job that took a heavy toll. In a world like this, you learn to be tough, but you also learn the value of community. The North End was a place where neighbors looked out for one another, bound together by a shared experience. And for the children of the North End, there was one great escape from the hardships of daily life: the ice. From the moment the puddles and ponds froze over in the fall until the spring thaw, the neighborhood kids lived on their skates. They didn't have fancy equipment. Their rinks were just patches of ice cleared on a frozen river or a flooded vacant lot. Their skates were often second-hand, and their sticks were whatever they could find or fashion themselves. But none of that mattered. On the ice, they were free. And from a very young age, it was clear that Billy Mosienko was special. He was smaller than most of the other boys, and he would remain relatively small for his entire career. But he was fast, incredibly fast. He had a low center of gravity and an explosive first step that left other kids chasing his shadow. His stick handling was mesmerizing, the puck seeming to be tied to his blade by an invisible string. He wasn't just playing hockey, he was expressing himself. The ice was his canvas. His father, a man who understood hard work above all else, wasn't initially sold on his son's obsession with a game. He saw it as a frivolous distraction from the more serious business of preparing for a life of labor. There's a famous family story that one day, in a moment of frustration, he took Bill's skates and threw them into the kitchen stove, determined to put an end to this hockey nonsense. But Bill's passion was not so easily extinguished. He managed to rescue his beloved skates from the fire, a little charred but still usable. Seeing his son's heartbroken determination, his father relented. It was a small moment, but a pivotal one. The dream was allowed to live. As a teenager, his talent became impossible to ignore. He started playing for local community clubs, and his reputation began to spread beyond the North End. He was a local hero, a wizard on skates who could do things no one else could. He eventually joined the Winnipeg Monarchs, a junior team, and it was there that the wider hockey world began to take notice. Scouts from the National Hockey League, the highest level of the sport, started making the long trip to the cold rinks of Manitoba just to catch a glimpse of this undersized prodigy. But this was the late 1930s and early 1940s. The world was on the brink of war, and the NHL was a different universe than it is today. It was a league of only 6 teams, a tough, gritty, and often brutal fraternity. It was a closed shop, incredibly difficult to break into. especially for a player who didn't have size on his side. The Chicago Blackhawks, a team known for its high-flying offensive style, were the ones who saw the potential. They saw past his 5'8" frame and saw the speed, the skill, the pure, unadulterated talent. They signed him to a contract, and in 1940, Bill Mosienko, the quiet kid from the north end of Winnipeg, left home to chase a dream that his father once tried to burn in a stove. He was on his way to the show. Arriving in the NHL is one thing. Staying there is another entirely. The league in the 1940s was a war of attrition. The travel was by train, long, rattling journeys from city to city. The arenas were old, cold, and often filled with cigar smoke. The players were paid a pittance compared to today's stars, and many had to work jobs in the off-season just to make ends meet. It was a league for tough men, and Bill Mosienko, with his slight build, looked like he could be broken in two by the league's hulking defensemen. But Mosienko possessed a different kind of toughness. It wasn't about brute force. It was about resilience and an unshakable confidence in his own skill. After a brief stint in the minors to hone his professional game, he was called up to the Chicago Blackhawks for good during the 1943-44 season. It was there that he found magic. The Blackhawks coach, Johnny Gottselig, had a stroke of genius. He decided to put the two smallest, fastest, and most skilled players on his team on the same line. He teamed Bill up with two brothers from Alberta, Max and Doug Bentley. Max was a brilliant playmaker, a future Hall of Famer in his own right, and Doug was a prolific goalscorer. Together, the three of them were a blur of speed and creativity. The media quickly gave them a nickname that would stick with them forever: the Pony Line. They were called that because they were small, but they played with the speed and spirit of wild horses. In an era dominated by clutching, grabbing, and grinding, the Pony Line was a revelation. They played a dazzling, wide-open style of hockey, a fire wagon brand of offense that thrilled fans wherever they went. They would crisscross and weave, passing the puck with telepathic precision, leaving bigger, slower opponents spinning in their wake. For a glorious few seasons, they were the most exciting line in all of hockey. Bill was the right winger on that line, the lightning bolt on the flank. His job was to use his explosive speed to get open, to drive the defense back, and to finish the plays the Bentley set up. And he did it brilliantly. In his first full season, he scored 32 goals, a remarkable total for that time. In the 1945-46 season, with the Pony Line at the peak of its powers, they finished first, second, and third in the entire league in scoring. It was an astonishing display of dominance. Bill Mosienko, the kid from Stella Avenue, was now one of the biggest stars in the game. But professional sports are fleeting. The Pony Line's reign was brilliant, but brief. By the late 1940s, injuries and trades had broken up the famous trio. Bill was now on his own, the veteran star on a struggling Blackhawks team. The mid-century Blackhawks were not a good hockey club. In fact, they were perennial basement dwellers, often finishing in last place. The glory days of the Pony Line felt like a distant memory. The crowds at the old Chicago Stadium were sparse, and the team was largely an afterthought in the city's sports scene. For Mosienko, these were the dog days. He was still a productive player, a respected veteran known for his clean play and gentlemanly conduct. He won the Lady Byng Memorial Trophy for sportsmanship in 1945. But the team's constant losing wore on him. The long train rides felt longer. The losses stung more. He was in his early 30s, an age when hockey players start to think about what comes next. His body was aching, and the fire that had burned so brightly was beginning to flicker. He was playing out the string, a great player on a terrible team. And that is the stage for our story. It's the final game of the 1951-52 season, Sunday, March 23rd, 1952. The Chicago Blackhawks are in New York City to play the Rangers at the old Madison Square Garden. the game is meaningless. Both teams have long been eliminated from playoff contention. It's the last game before the players scatter for the summer. For the few thousand fans who bothered to show up, it was just a way to kill a Sunday evening. No one in that building had any inkling that they were about to witness a moment of sporting history so extraordinary it would never be repeated. Bill Mosienko was about to skate into immortality. The game itself was unremarkable, a sleepy end-of-season affair. The New York Rangers were leading 6-2 late in the third period. The puck dropped, the clock ticked down, and everyone was just waiting for the final buzzer. Bill Mosienko, number 17 in the striped Chicago jersey, was on the ice. He was tired. It had been a long, disappointing season, but for a professional, the game isn't over until it's over. With just under 7 minutes left to play, Mosienko's line mate, Gus Bodnar, won a face-off in the Rangers' zone. The puck came back to him. Mosienko, hovering near the right side of the net, saw his opening. Bodnar slid the puck over, and in one fluid motion, Bill snapped it past the Rangers' rookie goaltender, Lorne Anderson. Goal. The time was 6:09 of the third period. A nice goal, but hardly headline news. The score was now 6-3. The players lined up for the next face-off. Again, Gus Bodnar was in the circle. Again, he won the draw cleanly. The puck shot forward. Mosienko, anticipating the play perfectly, had already bolted from the wing, streaking directly toward the net. The puck landed right on his stick. Before Lorne Anderson could even reset himself from the first goal, Mosienko fired a quick shot. Goal. The puck was in the back of the net again. A murmur went through the crowd. 2 goals, back-to-back, by the same player. The official time of the second goal was 6:20. It had taken him just 11 seconds. It was a remarkable feat, a flash of the old pony line brilliance. But it wasn't over. Back at centre ice, a stunned Rangers team lined up for a third face-off. Bodnar, now feeling the hot hand, stepped in once more. Incredibly, for the third consecutive time, he won the face-off. He pushed the puck ahead to George G., who nudged it forward into the Rangers' zone. And who was there, flying down the right wing like he was shot out of a cannon? Bill Mosienko. He picked up the puck at full speed, cut towards the net, and saw the beleaguered goalie, Lorne Anderson, coming out to challenge him. Mosienko faked a shot, pulling the puck to his backhand. Anderson lunged, sprawling on the ice. With the calm precision of a surgeon, Bill lifted the puck over the goalie's outstretched pad and into the empty net. Goal. The arena fell into a stunned silence for a beat, followed by an explosion of disbelieving applause. New York fans who had just been cheering their team's big lead were now on their feet, roaring for an opposing player. They knew they had just seen something that bordered on the supernatural. The official time of the third goal was 6:30. 3 goals. 3 goals by the same player in 21 seconds. It was, and still is, the fastest hat-trick in the 85-year history of the National Hockey League. It's a record that is considered by many to be truly unbreakable. In the modern game, with its highly structured defensive systems and elite goaltending, the idea of one player scoring 3 times in less than half a minute is pure fantasy. On the bench, his teammates were in shock. The Rangers goalie, Lorne Anderson, a young man playing in just his 3rd NHL game, could only shake his head in disbelief. He later said, "I don't know what happened. The puck was just coming at me from all angles." For his unfortunate role in history, the New York press nicknamed him 21-Second Anderson. In the dressing room after the game, reporters surrounded him, peppering him with questions about his incredible feat. But Bill, ever the humble and unassuming man, just shrugged. He gave credit to his line mate, Gus Bodnar, for winning the face-offs. He said he was just in the right place at the right time. "I was lucky," he told them. "The puck was following me." There was no grandstanding, no boasting. That wasn't his style. For Bill Mosienko, it was just another night at the office. He had done his job. He had scored 3 goals. He packed his bag, got on the train with his teammates, and went home to Winnipeg for the summer. He couldn't have known that those 21 seconds would echo through the rest of his life. A moment of brilliance that would forever attach his name to the history books. A moment of public triumph that would, in time, stand in stark and tragic contrast to the private battles his family was destined to face. For all the fame he achieved on the ice, the center of Bill Mosienko's universe was not the hockey rink. It was his family. In 1940, he married his sweetheart, Wanda, and together they built a life far away from the glare of the NHL spotlight. They had 3 children, 2 daughters, Joanne and Wendy, and a son, Bill Jr. After retiring from the NHL in 1955, Bill returned to his hometown of Winnipeg for good. He could have stayed in the game, perhaps as a coach or a scout, but he chose a different path. He wanted to be a husband and a father, to be present for his family in a way that the grueling NHL schedule had never allowed. He was a quiet, gentle man, deeply devoted to Wanda and the kids. He was the kind of father who was always there for school plays and family dinners, a steady and loving presence. With his hockey career behind him, he needed a new challenge, a way to provide for his family. He decided to invest his savings in a business that, like hockey, was a beloved Canadian pastime, bowling. He opened the Mosienko bowling lanes, a state-of-the-art facility that quickly became a fixture in the community. And just like on the ice, he excelled. He was a natural businessman, hard-working, fair, and well-respected. The single bowling alley grew into a successful chain, a testament to the same quiet determination that had taken him from the frozen ponds of the North End to the Hockey Hall of Fame, to which he was inducted in 1965. Life was good. The Mosienkos were a prominent and beloved Winnipeg family. They had financial security, a strong community, and the enduring glow of Bill's legendary career. From the outside, it was a perfect picture, the storybook ending for a local hero, a life of hard-earned success and quiet domestic happiness. But family life is never as simple as it appears from the outside. Behind the smiling photographs and the public accolades, a private struggle was taking hold within the Mosienko family, a struggle that would eventually cast a long, dark shadow over everything they had built. The source of this pain was their only son, Bill Jr. Growing up as the son of a legend is a heavy burden to bear. Everywhere Bill Jr. went in Winnipeg, he wasn't just Bill. He was Bill Mosienko's son. The name carried with it a weight of expectation that was impossible to escape. He was a talented athlete in his own right, a gifted hockey player and golfer. But no matter how well he played, he could never escape the comparison to his father. The ghost of those 21 seconds, the legend of the pony line, followed him everywhere. It was a pressure that over time became unbearable. As a young man, Bill Jr. began to struggle. He drifted from job to job, seemingly unable to find his own path, his own identity, separate from the famous name he carried. He was handsome, charming, and well-liked, but underneath there was a growing sense of frustration and a feeling of inadequacy. He started drinking. At first, it was just social, a way to cope with the pressure. But gradually, insidiously, the drinking became something more. It became a dependency, an addiction that slowly began to unravel his life. For Bill Sr. and Wanda, watching their son's descent was an agonizing and helpless experience. They did everything a family could do. They offered love, support, and financial help. They encouraged him to get treatment. There were periods of hope, moments when it seemed like Bill Jr. had turned a corner, only to be followed by the heartbreak of relapse. Alcoholism is a cruel and baffling disease, not just for the person who suffers from it, but for everyone who loves them. It introduces a tension and a sorrow into a family that can be all-consuming. Bill Sr., the man who was so graceful and controlled on the ice, was now facing an opponent he couldn't beat. He couldn't skate around this problem or outwit it with a clever move. He could only watch as the son he loved, the boy who carried his name, slipped further and further away. The joy of his own accomplishments, the pride in his legendary career, all of it must have felt hollow in the face of his son's profound pain. This was the hidden story of the Mosienko family. While the city of Winnipeg celebrated their famous father, a quiet tragedy was unfolding behind closed doors. The laughter and warmth that had once filled their home was now punctuated by worry, arguments, and tears. The picture-perfect family was cracking under the strain of a secret they carried with them every day. The legendary record holder, the celebrated Hall of Famer, was living a parent's worst nightmare. And the worst was yet to come. The struggle with addiction is a lonely war fought in the shadows. For years, Bill Mosienko Jr. battled his demons, locked in a cycle of hope and despair. The family's private turmoil was a poorly kept secret in a city like Winnipeg, where everyone knew the Mosienko name. There were whispers, rumors, moments of public embarrassment. For a family that valued its privacy and its reputation, it was a source of deep shame and sadness. It's difficult to fully comprehend the weight of this situation. Here was Bill Mosienko Sr., a man universally admired for his sportsmanship, his humility, his quiet dignity. He was a symbol of integrity, and yet he was powerless to save his own son. This introduces a painful complexity to his story. We often look at our heroes as if they are larger than life, immune to the messy, heartbreaking problems that affect ordinary people. But the truth is, fame is not a shield. A spot in the Hall of Fame offers no protection from the ravages of addiction or the depths of a loved one's mental health crisis. In that era, there was a profound lack of understanding about alcoholism as a disease. It was often seen as a moral failing, a weakness of character. The resources and support systems that exist today were simply not available. The Mosienko family was left to navigate this crisis largely on their own, armed only with their love for their son, which, in the face of such a powerful illness, was tragically not enough. The breaking point came on a cold day in October 1992. Bill Mosienko Jr., at the age of 43, took his own life. The news was a devastating blow, an emotional earthquake that shattered the family and sent shockwaves through the city of Winnipeg. The private pain that had been simmering for years was now a public tragedy. The legendary name, once associated only with impossible speed and athletic grace, was now linked to suicide and the dark stigma of addiction. For Bill Sr., the loss was unimaginable. The grief was immense, but it was also complicated by feelings of guilt, of failure, of asking the unanswerable question that haunts every parent who has lost a child in such a way. What could I have done differently? His friends and family said that the light went out of Bill's eyes after his son's death. The quiet, gentle man became even more withdrawn. He was 70 years old at the time, an age when a man should be enjoying his grandchildren, reflecting on a life well lived. Instead, he was consumed by a grief that was profound and unrelenting. He had reached the pinnacle of his profession, achieved something that no one else ever had. But in the end, none of it mattered. None of it could bring his son back. This is the central, heartbreaking contradiction of Bill Mosienko's life. The story of the 21-second hat trick is a story of perfect execution, of everything going right in a miraculous burst of inspiration. The story of his son is one of everything going wrong, a slow, tragic descent that no one could stop. The juxtaposition is almost cruel. One is a story of control and mastery, the other a story of powerlessness and loss. The death of his son was a wound from which Bill Mosienko never truly healed. Cancer came as a final battle that his grief-stricken body and spirit could no longer fight. Less than 2 years after Bill Jr.'s tragedy, on July 9th, 1994, Bill Mosienko Sr. died at the age of 72. His passing sent shockwaves through the hockey world, especially in the two cities that shaped his life, Chicago and Winnipeg. For fans around the world, and especially in Chicago, where he spent his entire NHL career, the news of his death was a farewell to a true legend. Sports newspapers immediately reprinted the story of the miraculous 21-second hat trick. Former teammates and opponents share memories of a player who was not only lightning fast on the ice, but also a true gentleman, an icon of humility and sportsmanship. He is remembered as a member of the illustrious Pony Pack and a Hall of Famer, part of the Chicago Blackhawks' golden legacy. But back home in Winnipeg, the loss is much more personal and profound. To Winnipeggers, Bill was more than just a faraway hockey star. He was one of them, a North End native who rose from humble beginnings to conquer the world. After retiring, he returned home, built a successful business, and became an integral part of the community. They didn't just lose a sports legend. They lost a neighbor, a respected businessman, a living symbol of immigrant success. For those who knew his story, Bill Mosienko's death was more than a passing from illness. They saw it as the tragic final chapter in a long family tragedy. His passing was seen as a release from earthly pain, a quiet and somber end to a life that had been vibrant but clouded by sadness in its final years. Many will remember 21 seconds, the moment of genius that immortalized him. But if we stop there, we miss the most important part of the story. His true legacy is not the speed of his legs, but the strength of his heart. It is the strength of a humble man who chose family and community over the spotlight. It is the quiet strength to face the unimaginable pain of a father and still live with dignity until the end. His story teaches us something simple yet profound. Behind every record, behind every headline, is a person. And the true measure of a life is not the brief moments of glory, but how we face the challenges in the dark after the lights have gone out.